And now it's time for the sponsor perspective portion of the program and a message from the sponsor of today's event, the Natural Security Campaign.
Thank you for joining today's event with The Hill, brought to you by the Natural Security Campaign on the national security implications rendered by the global loss of nature. I'm Rod Schoonover, and I spent a decade as a senior analyst and scientist in the U.S. intelligence community, analyzing the national security implications of environmental and ecological change. I'm also the lead author for a new report out from the Council on Strategic Risks called The Security Threat That Binds Us: The Unraveling of Ecological and Natural Security and What the United States Can Do About It. What our report makes clear is that the U.S. and international security communities need to treat ecological disruption and climate change as conduits of serious security threats rather than mere environmental concerns. It also argues that while the past decade has seen a lot of deserved attention on the security implications of climate change, the fraying of the ecological networks on which humanity depends poses a commensurate security threat, one that is interconnected with, but also distinct from, climate change. Much of what you've heard and will continue to hear during today's event is discussed in great detail in our report. The overarching message is that strains on critical Earth systems, water, food, forests, fisheries, wildlife, and the benefits to people that accrue from nature increasingly contribute to conflict, political instability, and economic harm. Deforestation, wildlife trade, both illegal and legal, and agricultural intensification are driving disease spillover from animals to people that spark pandemics. In short, a failure to bolster natural security is undermining U.S. national security. The global loss of nature and the accompanying degradation of ecological function is arguably the most underappreciated security threat of our time. And the past year has dramatically, if brutally, illustrated the deep connections between the degradation of natural systems and our national security and social and economic cohesion. Now, national security professionals are just coming to grips with the ramifications of what some ecologists call an ongoing biological annihilation, in which species are becoming extinct at rates far higher than the natural pace, and healthy and functional populations disappear even more quickly. At the same time, shortages of natural resources such as freshwater, food, and arable land can contribute to political instability, acrid geopolitics, and disrupted migration. The impacts of ecological degradation on health, safety, and prosperity are many, from crop failure and infectious disease outbreaks to conflict, loss of social cohesion, and erosion of livelihoods. Also factoring strongly are ongoing incidents of illegal exploitation of natural resources and the transnational criminal organizations that profit from them. Criminal networks are taking in billions of dollars a year from the illegal harvesting and trafficking of wildlife, timber, fish, and other natural resources. In doing so, they rob communities of their natural wealth, enable corruption, undermine the rule of law, and distort markets. In the case of commodities like timber and fish, these illegal activities have cascading effects on the economic security of the nation and livelihoods of our citizens, depressing global prices for products and costing American jobs and income. Economic losses in the U.S. forestry and seafood sectors are estimated to be as much as $1 billion a year. Sometimes ill-gotten resources fund bad actors that seek to sow chaos, spread extremism, and overthrow governments. Such is the case in parts of Africa, where the illegal trafficking of elephant ivory and charcoal have helped finance insurgent groups such as the Lord's Resistance Army and Al-Shabaab. All told, this ecological damage amounts to a significant threat to U.S. national security. So how can the U.S. address it? First and foremost, we need to recognize these threats are real, and that to confront them effectively, the U.S. government needs a reboot in its national security doctrine and architecture. The national security structures and agencies of the United States were initially designed to protect the country's interests against malign nation states. In recent decades, national security has evolved to confront threats from non-state actors and with an increased focus on human security. Going forward, in order to protect its national security interests and its citizens, the U.S. needs to become more adept at understanding and confronting actorless security threats, These include intensifying extreme weather events and other effects of climate change, growing pandemic risk from the spillover of wildlife-borne diseases, and other outcomes of ecological disruption. A nation with a significant defense budget will still be quite vulnerable to threats for which it is not only inadequately prepared for, but also can't perceive. These actorless security threats demand greater attention from the White House, the State Department, the intelligence community, the Department of Defense, as well as our federal science agencies. This greater attention needs to be accompanied by greater resources. With many growing threats rooted in the decline of nature and ecological systems, U.S. government efforts to conserve and protect the integrity of natural systems on a global scale must be an essential component of U.S. national security in the 21st century. The administration and Congress must appropriately resource efforts that can directly address ecological disruption and arrest the loss of nature that is leading to these security risks. We believe a tenfold increase in resource allocations over the next 10 years is warranted to programs that promote international conservation, combat environmental crime, enhance water and food security, strengthen pandemic prevention at the point of origin, and build local capacity. And given their positive impacts on U.S. national security interests and their high return on investment, the argument is strong for dramatic increases in these programs, most of which receive modest resources at present. For example, a significant increase in support for tropical forest conservation pays off on multiple fronts, avoiding the dangerous loss of biodiversity, lowering the risk of zoonotic spillover, and helping to mitigate climate change. A single initiative can help address all of these growing threats. The science on ecological disruption is clear, and the U.S. security community should take heed and follow the science. The U.S. needs to incorporate natural system expertise into national security processes. Many of the world's experts on these issues are already employed in the executive branch, but rarely get a seat at the national security table. And not only should scientists get a seat at the table, sometimes they should lead the meeting. Our defense, diplomatic, and intelligence communities currently have woefully inadequate scientific capacities to track and understand the ramifications of humanity's disruption of multiple Earth systems, particularly the biosphere. This is a serious vulnerability in our national security posture. Amplifying analysis and decision-making with expertise from scientific disciplines such as ecology, zoology, epidemiology, veterinary sciences, climate change biology, forestry, all fields essentially absent in the national security world, is critical to reducing that vulnerability. Our report is a landmark study aiming to deepen our understanding of the linkages between ecological disruption and security. While it builds on previous assessments, including by the U.S. intelligence community, it embodies a more comprehensive system-centric approach. We believe it demonstrates that the disruption of our planet's biological and ecological systems poses a grave and growing threat to our national security. We also believe this is an area warranting greater study and understanding and deeper involvement by the U.S. security community, especially the intelligence community. But even as we need to deepen our understanding, we also already know enough to understand that action is needed, urgent action, if we are going to respond to and counter these growing actorless threats. We encourage the administration and Congress to work to elevate these issues within our national security doctrine, strategies, education, and planning, to work with our international partners on global efforts to do the same, and to provide the increased resources needed to address these challenges effectively and head on.